This handbook describes the various environmental conditions affecting human survival and describes isolated personnel, activities necessary to survive during successful evasion or isolating events leading to successful recovery. It is the fundamental reference document providing guidance for any USAF service member who has the potential to become isolated. Deviations require sound judgment and careful consideration. This publication provides considerations to be used in planning and execution for effective mission accomplishment of formal USAF survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, SERE, training, environmentally specific SERE training, and combat survival continuation training programs. The tactics, techniques, and procedures in this publication are recognized best practices presenting a solid foundation to assist USAF service members to maintain life and return with honor from isolating events. A system of climate classification was used to describe the environmental characteristics of the land masses in the previous chapters. However, this system is not used to categorize the largest area of the world, the oceans. They are simply divided by their names and locations. All limits of oceans, seas, etc., are arbitrary, as there is only one global sea. The terms sea and ocean are often used interchangeably in reference to salt water. However, from a geographic point of view, a sea is a body of water that is substantially smaller than an ocean or is part of an ocean. The seas cover 70.8% of the Earth's surface. The waters are not evenly distributed, covering 61% of the surface in the northern hemisphere and 81% in the southern hemisphere. Traditionally, the seas are divided into 4 oceans: Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, and Arctic. These oceans, with their fringing gulfs and smaller seas, make up the world's seas. The seafloor features do, to some extent, influence the surface properties of the seas, that are, currents, waves, and tides. Within each of these 4 major oceans, numerous subdivisions known as seas may be geographically aligned along indistinct boundaries, island chains, geography of ocean floor. Examples include: the Coral Sea is an arm of the South Pacific Ocean lying east of Queensland, Australia, and west of New Hebrides and New Caledonia. It extends from the Solomon Islands on the north to the Chesterfield Islands on the south. The Bering Sea is located between Alaska and eastern Siberia, with its southern boundary formed by the arc of the Alaskan Peninsula and the Aleutian Islands. The Bering Strait connects it with the Arctic Ocean to the north. Many water bodies are partially enclosed by land and are known as gulfs. An example would be the Gulf of Mexico. The ocean has a complex circulation system made up of a variety of currents and countercurrents. These currents move at a rate from barely measurable to about 5.75 miles per hour. They may be relatively cold or warm currents that influence the climate and environment that exists on land and over the ocean. There is a constant movement of water from areas of high density, salinity, concentration, and pressure to areas of low density, salinity, concentration, and pressure in an attempt to establish equilibrium. These factors influence the movement of ocean currents. However, the primary influence on ocean currents is the wind. They also may be diverted by the Coriolis force and continental deflection. To fully understand the general climatic conditions and seasonal variations that exist over the global sea, each major ocean must be examined separately, with the exception of the Atlantic and Pacific, whose similar latitudinal references result in like characteristics. Exceptions will be noted. The 2 physical phenomena which have the greatest impact upon climate are currents and systems of high and low air pressures. Currents, with their basic characteristics of being either warm or cold and their inevitable convergence, influence the environment of the open seas. Semi- and quasi-permanent centers of high and low atmospheric pressure have equally significant influence on typical weather sequences, for example, temperature, wind, precipitation, and storms. In the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans between 5 degrees north latitude and 5 degrees south latitude, an equatorial trough of low pressure forms a belt where no prevailing surface winds exist and is known as the doldrums. Instead, The lack of extreme pressure gradients results in shifting winds and calms which occur as much as 1/3 of the time. Intense solar heating results in violent thunderstorms associated with strong squall winds. The convergence of these equatorial winds and trade winds from the intertropical front can be seen at a great distance because of towering cumulus clouds rising to 30,000 feet. In the vicinity of the intertropical front, heavy convective showers are quite common. Across the Atlantic and eastern Pacific, the front is usually north of the equator. Over the western Pacific, west of 180 degrees longitude, the doldrums belt oscillates considerably. Areas north of the equator receive their heavy rainfall from June to September. Areas south of the equator receive their heaviest precipitation between December and March. The meteorological sequence described above may be interrupted by periods of extreme weather centered on low pressure. All ocean currents have a profound influence on climate since the properties of the surface largely determine the properties of the various air masses. The following currents are examples of the currents and their influences. The cold water of the Peru or Humboldt currents has a tremendous effect on the climate of Peru and Chile. The cold air that lies over the current is warmed as it reaches land, increasing its capacity to hold moisture. The warm air does not give up the moisture until it passes over the high Andes Mountains. This accounts for the dry climate of the coast of Chile and Peru and a more temperate climate towards the equator than is usually found in the lower latitudes. Where the Labrador Current contacts the warm Gulf Stream, fog prevails and steep temperature gradients are present. The northeast coast of North America has much colder climates than the west coast of Europe at the same latitude. The warm currents account for the continually warm and pleasant weather in the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. The winds blowing off the warm water of the Norwegian and East and West Greenland currents account for the unusually mild climates in northern Europe. At the same latitude elsewhere, the temperatures are usually much colder. Seawater should never be ingested in its natural state. It will cause an individual to become violently ill in a very short period of time. When water is limited and cannot be replaced by chemical or mechanical means, it must be used efficiently. As in the desert, conserving sweat, not water, is the rule. IP should keep in the shade as much as possible and dampen clothing with seawater to keep cool. They should not overexert but relax and sleep as much as possible. If it rains, collect rainwater in available containers and store it for later use. Storage containers could be cans, plastic bags, or the bladder of a life preserver. Sealable containers are preferred to prevent water loss. Every item should be rinsed prior to use in order to reduce factory dyes, chemicals and residual salt water. Fresh water is ideal over salt water for rinsing equipment. The IP may have to wait using fresh water for rinsing to avoid salt contamination. Any stored fresh water versus not having fresh water quantities to allow for anything other than drinking. Drinking as much rainwater as possible while it is raining is advisable. If the fresh water should become contaminated with seawater, discard it. Figure 9.2. At night and on foggy days, IP should try to collect before drinking water by using a sponge, chamois, handkerchief, etc. Only water in its conventional sense should be consumed. The so-called water substitutes do little for the IP, and may do much more harm than not consuming any water at all. There is no substitute for water. Fish juices and other animal fluids are of little value in preventing dehydration. Fish juices contain protein which requires large amounts of water to be digested, and the waste products must be excreted in the urine, which increases water loss. IP should never drink urine. Urine is body waste material and only serves to concentrate waste materials in the body and require more water to eliminate the additional waste. Blood has also often been falsely identified by IP as a potential water substitute. Blood is in fact a food source and requires additional water to digest it. Personal protection from the elements is just as important on the seas as it is anywhere else. Some rafts come equipped with insulated floors, spray shields, and canopies to protect IP from heat, cold, and water. If rafts are not equipped or the equipment has been lost, IP should try to improvise these items using parachute material, clothing, or other equipment. Life forms in the seas range from one-celled animals, protozoan, to complex aquatic mammals. The fish and aquatic mammals rule the sea and are of the most concern to anyone in an isolating event on the open seas. The majority of fish and mammals can be used as food sources, but some must be considered as a hazard to life. Specific species that can be used for food will be covered in the sustenance chapter, while hazardous sea life will be discussed in greater detail in survival medicine. Although accounts of sea survival incidents are often gloomy, successful survival is possible. The raft will be at the mercy of the currents and winds, but IP have the ability to harness these. In the paragraphs discussing open sea travel, the environmental factors of oceans of the world will be considered as they relate to travel. The techniques for individual water rescue and swimming are important for recovering injured IP and equipment. Additionally, the problem of submersion must be considered, as well as how the anti-exposure suit, life preservers, and life rafts can extend an IP's life expectancy. This is why an IP must be familiar with the individual rafts and raft procedures. The ultimate goal of an IP on the open seas is to be rescued. However, a second goal, if rescue is not made, would be to make it to land. Sea currents flow in a clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere. This is caused by three factors: the sun's heat, the winds, and the Earth's rotation, Coriolis effect. Most sea currents travel at speeds of less than 5 miles per hour. Using currents as a mode of travel can be done by putting out the sea anchor and letting the current pull the raft along. IP should use caution when traveling through areas where warm and cold currents meet. It can be a storm-forming area with dense fog and high winds and waves. Winds also aid raft travel. In tropical areas, the winds are easterly blowing, trade winds. In higher latitudes, they blow from the west, westerlies. To use the winds as a mode of travel, the sea anchor should be pulled into the raft and, if available, a sail should be improvised from the canopy or spray shield. IP should be aware that pulling in the raft's sea anchor may cause it to flip during high winds. This is much more likely with life rafts without ballast buckets. Waves can be both an asset and a hazard to raft travel. Waves are normally formed by the wind. The severity of the wind determines the size of the waves. On open seas, waves range from a few inches to over 100 feet in height. Under normal conditions, waves alone will move a life raft only a few inches at a time. Therefore, using waves as a mode of propulsion is not practical. Waves are a great help in finding land or shallow areas in the sea. Ocean waves always break when they enter shallow water or when they encounter an obstruction. The force of energy of the wave depends on how abruptly the water depth decreases and the size of the waves. Breaking waves can be used as an aid to make a landfall. Storms at sea are probably the greatest hazard to IP and rafts. Aside from the waves created by a storm, the wind and rain can make life in a raft very difficult. The waves and wind can capsize a raft, or throw a person out of the raft, and then will constantly fill the raft with water. Leaving some water in the raft can add to the stability during the storm. Seasickness can result from gentle to severe wave action. Additionally, rescue efforts may be severely hampered by large waves. Tides are another form of wave, but they are very predictable. They occur twice daily and usually cause no problems for anyone in a raft. Tides may range from 1 to 40 feet in height depending on the area of the world. They should be considered when planning a landing. When the tide is going in, it will help propel the raft to shore. The action of the water going away from shore when the tide is going out makes landing difficult. IP should be aware of the saltwater crocodile. It is found throughout the Southeast Asian shoreline. It is a well-known man-eater, and is almost always found in salt or brackish water. It is more commonly found near river mouths and along the coasts. However, it has been known to swim as much as 40 miles out into the sea. Females with nests are likely to be vicious and aggressive. They will grow to a length of 30 feet, but most specimens are less than 15 feet in length. IP should watch for this reptile while landing their raft or fishing. IP will normally encounter reef fishes during the landing process by stepping on them. They may also be caught while fishing. Clothing and footgear must be worn at all times, whether landing the raft or fishing. Coral is normally found in warm waters, along the shores of islands and mainland. There are many different types of coral. They should be avoided since all can destroy a raft or severely injure an IP. It is best to stay in the raft when coral is encountered. If the IP must wade to shore, footgear and pants should be worn for protection. Moving slowly and watching every step may prevent serious injuries. Coral does not exist where fresh water enters the sea. IP need to be aware that because they see a ship, that it does not mean the ship sees them. Ships can be a welcome sight to the IP, but they can also be a hazard. Since the raft is a small object in a very large sea, the IP must constantly be aware that at night or during inclement weather, the raft will be difficult to see and can be struck by a large ship. It is important to always have signaling devices ready. A lone survivor may attach reflective devices to the top of a raft to maintain signaling efforts during periods of rest. Note: this is not ideal in non-permissive environments. On the night of February 4, 1982, Stephen Callahan was cruising alone in the mid-Atlantic aboard his 21-foot 4-inch sloop. In the middle of the night, his boat was struck by something, he believed it was whale, and sunk. That began Callahan's 1,800-mile, 2.5-month oceanic ordeal. 7 times in the course of the 76-day drift, Callahan spotted ships, twice within a mile. He fired his flare gun but there was no one on deck to see it. He wasn't bitter. "That's the way it is," he said. "My anger and frustration couldn't bring them topside to see me." 3 times he turned on his emergency position indicating radio beacon. It purred, hoping its signal would reach ships or aircraft, to no avail. Finally, on the night of April 20th, he saw the glow of lights on the horizon before him. It was an island. By dawn he could see it, approximately 10 miles ahead, rising black-green in the rolling sea, a thin line of surf creaming at the foot of dark cliffs. Then a boat came into view, a blue and yellow, wood-hulled fishing boat with high flaring bows and a crew of 3. The fishermen had been attracted by the swirl of birds over Callahan's raft, a sure sign of fish. As they pulled alongside, astonished to see the raft and its bearded, half-naked, emaciated cargo, one of them cried out, "Hey, Moan, what you doin'?" Callahan was rescued in sight of shore. With a ditching situation, the aircraft may not immediately sink. This may allow time to gather equipment prior to egress from the sinking aircraft. Historically, pre-planning and training have made the critical difference in IP taking equipment with them during an emergency. Should the aircraft sink prior to egress, IP should be aware that portable emergency oxygen or helicopter emergency egress device (HEED) may be available on the aircraft to assist in underwater egress. The plan of action for possible aircraft emergencies to include ditching should be reviewed prior to the mission. During preparation for ditching, stow loose equipment on aircraft and on body. Don any protective clothes under the LPU, if not already on. Turn off instrumentation, if applicable. Adjust position seat facing forward or aft being better. Have emergency gear close at hand or attached to body, that is emergency breathing device, EBD, ease bottle, medical kit, flashlight, if time. Review plan of action after impact, and use the buddy system. When bracing for impact, position body as instructed for specific location and seat. Personnel should generally have their lap belt snug and low, grip or locate a point of reference for an exit, and remain seated until the aircraft stabilizes in the water. When aircraft ditch, they tend to impact more than once, and the second impact will normally be more severe than the first. Low-wing airframes will have the majority of bottom damage occurring in the midsection of the aircraft. Double-decked aircraft will usually have flooding in lower compartment. On aircraft with long afterbodies, KC-135, EC-135, EC-18, the fuselage may break a few feet forward of the tail. The tail section may break off completely. Low-wing aircraft due to flotation support from the wings tend to ditch better than high-wing, C-17 and C-130, aircraft. Low-wing aircraft usually will have severe damage just aft or at the nose, cockpit area of the aircraft. High-wing aircraft will normally sink rapidly after impact until the wings settle in the water. As a result, most of the fuselage is submerged. Externally mounted equipment exerts variations on the aircraft stitching characteristics. Using the reference point, the IP should follow their pre-mission brief, accomplishing assigned tasks and/or immediately moves towards their ditching exit. Studies show that in controlled ditching only a small percentage of individuals are seriously injured from the impact, while most fatalities result from failure to bore in the life rafts. It is always safer for the IP to go from the aircraft directly to the life raft, avoiding any contact with the water if possible. Activate LPU only after exiting aircraft to avoid being pinned or trapped inside the aircraft by the activated flotation device. In high-wing aircraft, life rafts may have only one accessory kit and a lanyard attachment with free float pull ring for life raft separation from aircraft. In low-wing aircraft, over-wing launching of life rafts should be launched over the leading edge of the wing to avoid jagged edges of debris and flaps. When aircraft lands into the wind, it may be more advantageous to launch life rafts to the side or rear of wing. Due to the crest and trough breaking against the wing, the life raft may get pinned under or drag it over the wing when launching from the leading edge. When the wings are wet, they were extremely slick. Immediately upon exiting the aircraft, activate the LPUs. If possible, use safety line, egress ropes, straps, or lanyards to maintain placement while on the wing. When activating a life raft from a hatch or over wing, have a person at each side of the life raft, one holding the activation lanyard with someone holding onto the accessory kit, when possible. IP should stay upwind and clear of debris and fuel-covered water. IP may have to activate life rafts LPUs a distance from burning fuel or aircraft wreckage. This can be done by swimming underwater or splashing burning fuel away on the way to the surface. Before activation of LPUs and/or life rafts, IP will find themselves floating in the water as they wait to bore in the life raft. To avoid the potential of an IP floating away, they should chain up to maintain safety of the group. The chain up is initiated by the IP communicating, shouting, the instruction to chain up. IP chain up by wrapping their legs around the torso of the next individual and paddling towards the life raft. IP's visibility may be reduced during the chain up process by splashing water. Certain LPUs, such as the adult, child, have lights that will activate with water exposure and aid in identification, location during nighttime and inclement weather. Prior to boarding any type of raft, the IP needs to perform the swim. Separate or soften the LPUs and push them behind their body. IP soften their LPU by letting air out of the oral inflation tube. W. Wet the boarding ramp area to include the upper cells. I. Inspect yourselves for any sharp objects that could cause damage to the raft, that is, parachute releases, pens, pencils, etc. M. Mount the raft. A search for IP is usually started at the last known position or ditching site. Missing personnel may be unconscious and floating low in the water. Rescue procedures are illustrated in Figure 9.3. IP immediate actions within the raft. Once inside of the raft, the IP needs to take care of some immediate action needs. The order of the 5 A's is situational dependent based on the immediate needs of the IP. A. Anchor. In all rafts, IP must deploy the sea anchor, crest to trough. If your raft is at the bottom of the wave, you would place your anchor at the top and vice versa, to help reduce drift and increase stability. A. Assist yourself, as well as others into the raft. A. Air. Ensure the life raft is fully inflated at all times and make necessary adjustments based on the type of life raft, that is, 20-man raft equalizer tube. It is difficult to enter a life raft that not fully inflated. IP may need to inflate the life raft before entering. A. Accessory kit. All rafts, look to see if the accessory kit is floating or part of the bottom of the life raft, that is, 46-man and 25-man. If not, it could be under the raft, that is, 20-man, 7-man. A. Analyze. As with all isolating events, you must analyze your situation. The best technique for rescuing IP from the water is to throw them a line with a life preserver attached. Figure 9.3. The second best technique is to send a swimmer, rescuer, wearing LPUs from the raft with a line. This will help to conserve energy while recovering the IP. The least acceptable technique is to send an attached swimmer without floatable devices to retrieve an IP. In all cases, the rescuer must wear a life preserver. The strength of a person in a state of panic in the water should not be underestimated. A careful approach can prevent injury to the rescuer. Rescuers must always remain attached to the life raft. They can accomplish this by securing the heaving line or a safety line to themselves. Rafts will travel faster than an IP floating in the water, so once separated, the rescuer may never get back to the life raft. When the rescuer is approaching an IP in trouble from behind, there is little danger of being kicked, scratched, or grabbed. The rescuer should swim to a point directly behind the IP and grasp the back strap of the life preserver. A side stroke may then be used to drag the IP to the raft. All debris from the aircraft should be inspected and salvaged. Rations, canteens, thermos and other containers, parachutes, seat cushions, extra clothing, maps, etc. Secure equipment to the raft to prevent loss. Special precaution should be taken with battery-operated and easily corroded material to keep them dry so they will function when needed. Rafts should be checked for inflation. Leaks and points of possible chafing should be repaired as required. Holes may be identified by water bubbling in or the sound of hissing. All water should be removed from inside the raft. Care should be taken to avoid snagging the raft with shoes or sharp objects. Placing the sea anchor out will slow the rate of drift. If there is more than one raft, they should be connected with at least one 25-foot line. Donning the anti-exposure suit prior to the aircraft ditching is essential in cold climates. Erecting a windbreak, spray shields, and canopies will protect IP from the elements. IP should huddle together and exercise regularly to maintain body heat. Monitoring the physical condition of IP and administering first aid to survivors is essential. If available, seasickness pills will help prevent vomiting and resulting dehydration. IP should have signaling equipment available. Immediate use should be weighed against inoperability due to wetness. An example would be water getting into the day or night end of a prepared Mk13 flare. IP need to ensure that items affected by salt water are kept dry, that is, compasses, watches, lighters, etc. The raft repair plugs should be secured but made easily accessible. IP need to consider the special aspect of the open sea environment, that is, reflected sunlight, saltwater chafing, sores, immersion, etc. See SERE Medicine Chapter 5. The senior ranking individual should calmly analyze the situation and plan a course of action to include duty assignments, watch duty, procuring and rationing food and water, etc. All IP, except those who are badly injured or completely exhausted, are expected to perform watch duty, which should not exceed 2 hours. The IP on watch should look for signs of land, passing vessels or aircraft, wreckage, seaweed, schools of fish, birds, and signs of chafing/leaking of the raft. Food and water can be conserved by saving energy. IP should remain calm. Maintaining a sense of humor and a positive mental attitude will help keep morale high. IP should remember that rescue at sea is a cooperative effort. Search aircraft contacts are limited by the visibility of IP based on the availability of visual or electronic signaling devices. Visual and electronic communications can be increased by using all available signaling devices, signal mirrors, radios, signal panels, dye marker, and other available devices, when an aircraft is in the area. In a permissive environment, a log should be maintained with a record of last known position, time of ditching, names and physical condition of IP, ration, food and water, schedule, winds, weather, direction of swells, times of sunrise and sunset, and other navigation data. The greatest problem an IP is faced with when submerged in cold water is death due to hypothermia. When an IP is immersed in cold water, hypothermia occurs rapidly due to the decreased insulating quality of wet clothing and the fact that water displaces the layer of still air which normally surrounds the body. Water causes a rate of heat exchange approximately 25 times greater than air at the same temperature. It is critical that IP dons an anti-exposure garment prior to ditching. The best protection for an IP against the effects of cold water is to get into the life raft, stay dry, and insulate the body from the cold surface of the bottom of the life raft. Wearing the anti-exposure suit will extend an IP's life expectancy considerably even if it is donned inside the life raft. It is important to keep the head and neck out of the water and well insulated from the cold water effects. Wearing life preservers increases the predicted survival time just as the body position in the water increases the probability of survival. Remaining still and assuming the fetal position or the heat escape lessening posture, HELP, will increase an IP survival time. About 50% of the heat is lost from the head. It is important to keep the head out of the water. Other areas of high heat loss are the neck, the sides, and the groin. Some side inflation LPUs can be used to bring the knees, legs higher and holding them against the body by reconnecting the LPU under the knees. This allows the IP to take a cannonball position. IP should place their arms, hands underneath their thighs, knees in the cannonball position to lessen fatigue. If there are several IP in the water, huddling close, side to side in a circle, will preserve body heat. An IP who knows how to relax in the water is in little danger of drowning, especially in salt water where the body is of lower density than the water. Trapped air in clothing will help buoy the IP in the water. If IP are in the water for long periods, the IP will have to rest from treading water. The IP may do this by floating on the back. If this is not possible, the following technique should be used. Rest erect in the water and inhale. Put the head face down in the water and stroke with the arms. Rest in this face down position until there is a need to breathe again. Raise the head and exhale. Support the body by kicking arms or legs and inhaling, then repeat the cycle. During high sea states, an IP may ingest considerable amounts of seawater from freestyle swimming. The action of side breathing can cause illness and/or constant spitting that leads to dehydration. The backstroke is much easier and efficient for the average swimmer. Clothes can be used as a flotation device. Get the head above water. Float on the stomach with arms outstretched, remembering to turn the head to the side to breathe regularly. Maintaining any improvised flotation device's buoyancy is a continual process of refilling the air and securing the bottom seal. Use the blouse, shirt as a temporary flotation device. Button closed. Tie close the collar, neck to create a seal. Open bottom of the shirt and vigorously slap the opening down into the water, trapping air. Once air is trapped, tie off the bottom of the shirt. The air will settle into the shoulders of the shirt, adding buoyancy. Use the pants, flight suit as a temporary flotation device. Remove the boots and pants, flight suit. Button the pants closed or zip flight suit to the waist and tie each pants leg closed. Care should be taken not to lose boots or other vital equipment which the IP may need later on. Orient the waist of the pants, flight suit fly towards the IP, swing the pants over the IP's head and down into the water in a quick slapping motion to trap air into the legs. Kick hard during this process to avoid toppling over. When the pants legs are full of air, hold the waist closed below the water level. Place an inflated leg under each arm with a waistband in front of the IP. The pants should now resemble an underarm life preserver. Keep the waistband submerged and lean into the crotch of the pants, flight suit. Splash the pants legs with water frequently to avoid drying. If the pants dry, air will be able to escape. The bulkiness of clothing, equipment, and/or any personal injuries will necessitate the immediate need for flotation. Normally, a life preserver will be available for donning before entering the water. Proper inflation of the life preserver must be done after clearing the aircraft but, preferably, before entering the water. Upon entering the water, the two cells of the life preserver should be fastened together. Limited swimming may be done with the life preserver inflated by cupping the hands and taking strong strokes deep into the water. The life preserver may be slightly deflated to permit better movement. If a group must swim, they should try to have the strongest swimmer in the lead with injured persons intermingle within the group. It is best to swim in a single file. Swimming is easier with LPUs when a modified swimming stroke is incorporated. To travel long distances with the least expenditure of energy, the backstroke will serve the IP well. To perform this stroke, the IP should lay on their back, kick their feet, and reach above the shoulders with cupped hands, then bring the hands to the sides as if doing jumping jacks. The main drawback is the difficulty seeing where the IP is going. The side stroke is best for pulling along an injured IP equipment. To perform this stroke, the IP should lay on their side, grasp the object they are carrying with their top hand, kick their feet, and reach out with the opposite hand. Cup the hand and make a downward motion, pulling the hand down to their side. When the IP needs to approach an object, that is, raft, rescue devices, etc., the breaststroke is the best method to get there. To perform this stroke with side inflation LPUs, ensure the LPUs are reconnected in front of the IP, and then push them under the body so they were at about stomach level. Roll forward onto the belly, reach the arms out in front with hands cupped, kick the feet, and bring the hands back to the IP sides. For horse collar style LPUs, the process is the same minus the reconnect. There are three needs which can be satisfied by most rafts. They are 1. Personal protection, 2. Mode of travel, and 3. Evasion, camouflage. The one-man raft has a mainsail inflation chamber. If the CO2 bottle malfunctions and does not inflate the raft, or if the raft develops a leak, it can be inflated orally. The spray shield acts as a shelter from the cold, wind, and water. In some cases, this shield serves as insulation. The insulated bottom plays a significant role in the IP's protection from hypothermia by limiting the conduction of the cold through the bottom of the raft. Travel is more effectively made by inflating or deflating the raft to take advantage of the wind or current. The spray shield can be used as a sail, while the ballast buckets serve to increase raft drag in the water. The last device which may be used to control the speed and direction of the raft is the sea anchor. The primary purpose of the sea anchor is to stabilize the raft. The one-man raft is connected to the aircrew member by a lanyard parachuting to the water. IP should not swim to the raft, but pull it to their position via the lanyard. The parachute JL releases should be closed and the life preserver separated before boarding the raft. Figure 9.7. The raft may hit the water upside down, but may be righted by approaching the bottle side and flipping it over. The spray shield must be in the raft to expose the boarding handles. If the IP has an arm injury, boarding is best done by turning the back to the small end of the raft, pushing the raft under the buttocks and lying back. Another method of boarding is to push down on the small end until one knee is inside and lie forward. In rough seas, it may be easier for the IP to grasp the small end of the raft and, in a prone position, kick and pull into the raft. Once in the raft, lying face down, the sea anchor should be deployed and adjusted. To sit upright in the raft, one side of the seat kit might have to be disconnected and the IP should roll to that side. The spray shield is then adjusted. There are two variations of the one-man raft, with the improved model incorporating an inflatable spray shield and floor for additional insulation. The spray shield is designed to help keep the IP dry and warm in cold oceans, and protect them from the sun in the hot climates. The IP seat kit may puncture the raft if attached to both sides of the harness. One side of the seat kit should be disconnected and the IP should then roll towards the disconnected side, so the seat kit ends up in the IP's lap as they enter the raft. The sea anchor can be adjusted to either act as a drag by slowing down the rate of travel with the current or as a means of traveling with the current. When deployed, the sea anchor, figure 9.8, will act as a drag and the IP will stay in the general area. When the sea anchor is tied off or closed, figure 9.8, it will form a pocket for the current to strike and propel the raft in the direction of the current. Additionally, the sea anchor should be adjusted so that when the raft is on the crest of a wave, the sea anchor is in the trough of the wave. The 7-man raft is found in the Survival Drop Kit, MAL kit, used by USAF Rescue Forces. This type of raft may inflate upside down and may, therefore, require the IP to right the raft before boarding. The IP should ensure that nothing is attached which may puncture or tear the life raft when boarding. JL releases closed before boarding. IP should always work from the bottle side to prevent injury if the raft turns over. Facing into the wind provides additional assistance in righting the raft. The handles on the inside bottom of the raft are used for boarding. The handles on the underside are used to right the raft. The boarding ladder is used to board if someone assists in holding down the opposite side. If assistance is unavailable, the IP should work from the bottle side with the wind at the back to help hold down the raft. The IP should separate the life preserver, grasp an oar-lock and boarding handle, kick the legs to get the body prone on the water, and then kick and pull into the raft. If IP are weak or injured, the raft may be partially deflated to make boarding easier. Manual inflation can be done by using the pump to keep buoyancy chambers and cross seat firm, but the raft should not be overinflated. The buoyancy chambers and cross seat should be rounded but not drum tight. Hot air expands, so on hot days, some air may be released while air may be added on cold days. Rafts are not equipped with keels, so they cannot sail into the wind. However, anyone can sail a raft downwind, and multiplace, except 20-25 man, rafts can be successfully sailed 10 degrees off from the direction of the wind. An attempt to sail the raft should not be made unless land is near. If the decision to sail is made and the wind is blowing toward a desired destination, IP should fully inflate the raft, sit high, rig a sail, and use an oar as a rudder. Taking in the sea anchor will make the life raft more responsive to the wind instead of the current. Bringing in the sea anchor during strong winds may cause the life raft to flip over. Square sails should be erected in the bow using oars with their extensions as the mast and crossbar. A waterproof tarpaulin or available material may be used for the sail. If the raft does not have regular mast socket and step, the mast may be erected by tying it securely to the front cross seat using braces. The bottom of the mast must be padded to prevent it from chafing or punching a hole through the floor whether or not a socket is provided. The heel of a shoe, with the toe wedged under the seat, makes a good improvised mast step. The corners of the lower edge of the sail should not be secured to the raft, instead the lines attached to the lower corners should be held with the hands so that a gust of wind will not rip the sail, break the mast, or capsize the raft. Every precaution must be taken to prevent the raft from turning over. In rough weather, the sea anchor is kept out away from the bow. The passengers should sit low in the raft with their weight distributed to hold the upwind side down. They should also avoid sitting on the sides of the raft or standing up to prevent falling out. Sudden movements, without warning the other passengers, should be avoided. When the sea anchor is not in use, it should be tied to the raft and stowed in such a manner that it will hold immediately if the raft capsizes, no matter how the raft lands in the water. It is ready for boarding. The accessory kit is attached by a lanyard and is retrieved by hand. The center chamber can be inflated manually with the hand pump. The 20/25/46 man raft should be boarded from the aircraft if possible. If the raft is not boarded from the aircraft, then follow the steps below. Approach lower boarding ramp, steps, or stern. Separate the life preserver. Perform swim procedures. Grasp the boarding handles and kick the legs to get the body into a prone position on the water's surface, then kick and pull until inside the raft. If for any reason the raft is not completely inflated, boarding will be made easier by approaching the intersection of the raft and ramp, grasping the upper boarding handle, swinging one leg up onto the cells of the life raft as in mounting a horse. This leg will be partially inside the life raft, and then using the leg in the water and your hands holding the boarding handles, kick and pull until your body is over the partially inflated life raft cells and inside. Should the raft be equipped with an equalizer tube, it should be clamped upon entering the raft to prevent deflating the entire raft, in case of puncture. The 20/25/46 man raft can be inflated by using the pump to keep the chambers and centering firm. They should be well rounded but not drum tight. The lookout should watch carefully for signs of land. Some indications of land include a fixed cumulus cloud in a clear sky, or in a sky where all other clouds are moving, often hovers over or slightly downwind from an island. In the tropics, a greenish tint in the sky is often caused by the reflection of sunlight from the shallow lagoons or shelves of coral reefs. In the Arctic, ice fields or snow-covered land are often indicated by light-colored reflections on clouds, quite different from the darkish gray reflection caused by open water. Deep water is dark green or dark blue. Lighter color indicates shallow water, which may mean land is near. In fog, mist, rain, or at night, when drifting past a nearby shore, land may be detected by characteristic odors and sounds. The musty odor of mangrove swamps and mudflats and the smell of burning wood carry a long way. The roar of surf is heard long before the surf is seen. Continued cries of seabirds from one direction indicate their roosting place on nearby land. Birds are usually more abundant near land than over the open sea. The direction from which flocks fly at dawn and to which they fly at dusk may indicate the direction of land. During the day, birds are searching for food and the direction of flight has no significance unless there is a storm approaching. While birds may be an indication of land, sighting them does not always mean land is near. Land may be detected by the pattern of the waves, which are refracted as they approach land. Shows the form the waves assume. Land should be located by observing this pattern and turning parallel to the slightly turbulent area marked X on the illustration and following its direction. Care should be taken in all circumstances to lanyard off and secure equipment prior to making landfall. No matter how the IP plans on getting ashore, they should observe and utilize the wave patterns to their advantage. Waves occur in patterns, and the IP should observe for the largest wave. The IP should immediately make their effort to get to shore following the largest wave to avoid getting pummeled into the seashore. Distances on the water are very deceptive. In most instances, staying with the raft is the best course of action. If the decision is made to swim, a life preserver or other flotation aid should be used. Shoes and at least one thickness of clothing should be worn. The side or breaststroke will help conserve strength. If surf is moderate, the IP can ride in on the back of a small wave by swimming forward with it and making a shallow dive to end the ride just before the wave breaks. The swimmer should stay in the trough between waves and high surf, facing the seaward wave and submerging when the wave approaches. After the wave passes, the swimmer should work shoreward in the next trough. If the swimmer is caught in the undertow of a large wave, push off the bottom and swim to the surface and proceed shoreward. A place where the waves rush up onto the rocks should be selected if it is necessary to land on rocky shores and avoid places where the waves explode with high white spray. After selecting the landing point, the swimmer should advance behind a large wave into the breakers. The swimmer should face shoreward and take a sitting position with the feet in front, 2 or 3 feet lower than the head, so the knees are bent and the feet will absorb shocks when landing or striking submerged boulders or reefs. If the shore is not reached the first time, the IP should swim with hands and arms only. As the next wave approaches, the sitting position with the feet forward should be repeated until a landing is made. Water is quieter in the lee of a heavy growth of seaweed. This growth can be very helpful. The swimmer should crawl over the top by grasping the vegetation with overhand movements. A rocky reef should be crossed in the same way as landing on a rocky shore. The feet should be close together with knees slightly bent in a relaxed sitting posture to cushion blows against coral. In most cases, any life raft can be used to make a shore landing with no danger. Going ashore in strong surf is dangerous. Survey the shore for a safe location to make landfall. The IP should look for gaps in the surf line and head for them while avoiding coral reefs and rocky cliffs. These reefs don't occur near the mouth of freshwater streams. Stay out of rip currents and strong tidal currents which may carry the raft out to sea. If caught in a rip current, paddle perpendicular from the current until free from its forces. Take down the mast. Don clothing and shoes to avoid injuries. Fully inflate, adjust, and securely fasten life preserver. Stow equipment. Use paddles to maintain control. Ensure the sea anchor is deployed to help prevent the sea from throwing the stern of the raft around and capsizing it. The sea anchor should not be deployed when traveling through coral. In a medium surf with no wind, IP should keep the raft from passing over a wave so rapidly that it drops suddenly after topping the crest. If the raft turns over in the surf, every effort should be made to grab and hold onto the raft. The IP should ride the crest of a large wave as the raft nears the beach, staying inside until it has grounded. If there is a choice, a night landing should not be attempted. If signs of people are noted, it might be advantageous to wait for assistance. Sea ice landings should be made on large stable floes only. Icebergs, small floes, and disintegrating floes could cause serious problems. The edge of the ice can cut, and the raft deflated. Use paddles and hands to keep the raft away from the sharp edges of the iceberg. The raft should be stored a considerable distance from the ice edge. It should be fully inflated and ready for use in case the floe breaks up. Thank you for watching.